Hey, Bamise, thank you so much for doing this with me today. I'm really glad that, we're having this conversation. You and I have talked about this a lot. Before we jump, though, I want you to quickly introduce yourself in your own words.
Hi, so I'm very excited to be here. I think this is like a topic that I enjoy talking about, and it's something that you and I have spoken about a lot. So, yes, my name is Bamise. I currently work in a beauty company as a sustainability reporting manager. So, I do all things sustainability compliance.
And, the reason I wanted to have you on is because a lot of people, they're doing great work, but yet they feel invisible. And, your experience is a great example of how learning to track and frame impact can change that. At what point did you actually think about the fact that the work that you were doing was not coming across?
I think for me, I learned the hard way that doing good work is not enough. Like, you have to do good work as much as you have to be visible. And yes, people see it. Yes, people, acknowledge that you're doing good work. But I don't think anyone else is as passionate about your career as you are. So I think for me, the frustration was, I'm getting all these accolades, I'm getting all this feedback, but it wasn't like converting into like, good performance reviews or like promotion and everything. And so for me, it became a question of, okay, I know that you all see me, like what is what is going on? And so I think that got me to a point where I was like, okay, like I think there is a gap between just doing good work and also like people seeing and acknowledging when it matters that you do good work. So I think that that was where like tracking and having just like keeping a shit came in for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's such great reflection because you do the work and then you're hearing kudos. Bamishe, kudos, you're doing great work. Good job. But then it's not translating to something that aligned with your own ambition. So you reached out.
I did.
And then what happened?
I think when I spoke with you about, oh, like this is what's happening, I think it was you probing that made me start thinking about certain things and I thought that our conversation was super helpful because like for me, at the time I was straight out of school and I was just passionate about like proving myself. I just wanted to get a job. So I got a job. Then what? And then you started asking me more questions that made me very intentional about my career and making sure that, beyond proving myself and being brought into like where I was at the time, how am I making sure that people know that this is what I have been doing? And there's like a one sheet that everyone can say, oh, this is what I'm like a portfolio. Like I think it's a brag sheet that, okay, this is what I did and this is what it translated to. So I think like you asking questions got me thinking about how to like talk about the work that I do and how to like measure the impact. I think one of the important questions you had asked me is that what is it about what you did that made the difference on the project? And that's what you should be tracking because anyone can do XYZ, but what about your input made it different? So like that probing got me thinking about my impact.
Yeah, I actually want to double click on two things. The first one is what you just talked about. Like, what were the questions, right? That actually got you thinking. And the one you mentioned right now is like, what was it that you contributed, right, to the project? I know that we all want to say, we did that. Yes, we did it. But I want to understand uniquely what you brought to the table and how you influenced the impact of that work. So that's one. I think that I'm going to add very quickly, and I'm sure we talked about this as well, is you really need to think about like what was at stake? Like if you did not action that you took, what was at stake? And how can you connect that to the strategic imperative for your company? So is there anything you would add there before we move on to that one sheet you talked about?
Yes, I think one thing that I'll add there is that we like generally because of how fast-paced work environments can be, we tend to see what we do as routine, like, oh, hey, this is what I do every day and everything, forgetting that what you do actually like makes real impact. And even though what you do every day, by the time you start asking yourself and probing about what you did in certain instances, you realize that your work is not as routine as you think it is, you're actually making more impact than you acknowledge. And so, like, just asking yourself those questions, like, what did I do that made things different? It helps you see your work better. And I feel like it also motivates you to want to do more. So it's like a two-way reflection.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for that. And you talked about that sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Say more.
Yes, so I call it my brag sheet. Essentially, what I do is after the completion of every project. So, like, for example, a lot of what I do is tied to like disclosure. So when I complete like a report, when I complete a task, there is like a resulting document or there's like an outcome from it. And so essentially what I do is that at the completion of every project, I write, but beyond also getting like to the conclusion, there are like also some like milestones before you get to the final outcome that you get acknowledgments from like team members. Like, say you did a survey to be able to get to XYZ, like, how did the survey help? Or maybe like you invented a process that is now what everyone is going to be running with in terms of like getting that task done. So it's not only like a sheet that tracks like final projects, it also tracks like milestones that get you to your final, deliverables. It tracks accolades that you get at work. It tracks, for me, I do like writing, I write articles. It tracks like articles and also like impressions that I get from like my publications. It also tracks like impressions. So even if it's like comments, especially from like industry leaders in the space where I work, I take a script and I just attach it to that sheet. And I think what it does is that it gives like credibility to the work that you do externally. But I think for me, beyond giving credibility externally, it does something for me where it makes me know, because like personally, I don't like just doing routine work. Like, I want to see real impact when I do my work. And I think that just keeping that brag sheet on days where I feel like, am I doing well enough? Am I doing good enough? I think it's like a reference point, that it's like a gallery of my achievements, both small and big wins, that I refer to every now and then to just encourage myself. Like, I'm farther from where, I came from, but I'm closer to where I'm going. So beyond just like that external credibility, it's also like a document that bolsters how I feel. So what I do is like, for every time I draft like the sheets in sections for like great milestones, quick wins. I also put like speaking engagements, external publications, and accolades from like colleagues and industry experts. So it's like divided into different sections, and it just helps me. So like if I have to talk about what I do or my work, even if it's like just a random conversation with someone who's like, oh, what do you do? Sometimes I just like refer to it to refresh my knowledge. Because I feel like if you work in a fast-paced environment, you tend to do so much within such little time. And if you're not tracking, you would forget what you do sometimes. And so like it's like a repository that reminds you of, what you can do, what you have done, and what you can build on to get to where you're going.
I love that so much because I mean, like looking back, like maybe weekly or however your cadence is, and like just seeing how much you've come far, the work that you've done, what you've contributed. But I want to know specifically, like, how has this influenced work for you? What has shifted, and how have you been able to actually use this brag sheet?
I think I will talk about it from like a performance review perspective. So performance reviews are typically done like, there's a cadence to it, but sometimes it's like, depending on where you work, it's once a year or sometimes it's quarterly. And like I said, you're doing so much, you're moving so fast, you're not necessarily tracking. So when it's time to like fill my performance evaluation sheet and they say, oh, highlight your top three, achievements this quarter, or like highlight the top three things you've done this year, highlight your biggest wins, highlight your biggest challenges. I go into that document to be able to like have an informed perspective when I'm answering those questions. Because I feel sometimes like there are some achievements that, they're just like outstanding, they're out there. But then there are also some that there are major wins, but because you're like just moving on quickly to the next thing, you kind of forget. And so it helps me when I'm trying to articulate my impact in performance reviews. I have a visual that identifies all the things that I have done. Then it helps me prioritize what becomes top three. And I pick what becomes top three because I ask myself again, why what I did matters and what was the impact. And so what becomes top three depends on how strong the narrative from the why it matters and what did you do. That's how I.
I love what you said. about informed perspective. Oh my gosh. I wish we had all day to talk about this, but we've talked about the tracking, which you have like a very good rigor around how you do that. Now let's talk about the framing bit. Because yes, you can track, but how do you actually then frame the impact? Can you share some nuggets?
Of course, and I think I'm going to be like saying things that you taught me. So this is not originally my idea. I remember that when I was working on, my performance evaluation, I had reached out to talk about, how do I frame my impact? And I think one of the things that stood out for me the most in like what you told me is specificity and not just being fluffy
Mm.
about what, because again, things are moving fast. Your manager probably has like God knows how many like direct reports that they are working through. Even though, yes, like this is somebody that approved the work that you did, that knows what you did, but they're working with several people. I think like the framing for me, it was, the what, the why it matters, and also like what did it change, what was the impact. So I think like being able to like where I could put numbers to the impact, and where numbers were impossible because you would not always have like numbers like quantitative like metrics. There would also be like the narrative. How are you getting in detail? So it's like detailed but yet not too long, to the extent that you're just like belaboring whoever is reviewing with too much information. So I think the framing, I remember like, I mean, I won't get into the details, but I remember like how we did it was, what is the achievement? What was, I think like what you said is like, what was the Bamise touch?
Exactly. I know we went back.
Yes, yes. We went back and forth on like what was the, if you were not on the project, what would not have happened, right? Writing that, and also like why it matters for the entire company. And I think that was a game changer. I actually got positive feedback on how I did the framing, because like again, it's like a blank question and you get to like just be the architect of how you describe your
Oh
impact.
my gosh, you have to be the architect. Yeah, dropping sage advice. That's right. I think that you did the work. Like you already did the work, right? But I'm sure you could have talked about it in several ways. But your job at that particular point is one to advocate for the work, the hard work that you've done, right? And then also for your manager, you need to empower them so that they can represent your work. Like you
Yes,
said, they might have more than one direct report. And even when they have more than one direct report, like you should still have that agency to really shape the narrative of the work that you did. And I think what was
absolutely.
very important in what you just talked about is you need to connect it to why that matters to your company, right? Like no matter what level or what domain you work in your company, you should be able to see a straight line to how it actually helps move your company forward. I love
Absolutely.
that. Nice. All right. So, what do you wish you had known earlier? Like once you track back, what do you wish you had known earlier?
I honestly think it's the importance of like practical guidance
Mm,
from people who have gone before you.
mm.
I think, you know, and this is shout out to you again.
Thank you.
Just having you when I moved down here to like, and talking to you about, my career and everything. It started out as a casual conversation, right? And I would always, after that, I was like, okay, there's value here. And then I would always like come back to you every single time.
Mm,
And I think that what I wish I had known earlier is the value in having someone who can do that for you, like that coaching, where you don't just, because I think that one of the things that is overemphasized in like formal education is excellence,
mhm,
and not being excellent and showing excellence.
mm,
The emphasis, I think what like coaching does for you is that it helps you, motivates you to be excellent, but also show that you are an excellent, you're a good hire, you're a good candidate. And it's something, because like this, when I met you, it wasn't my first role. Like I had
yeah.
practiced and done other things, but it's been a game changer for me, because like now I know that, because being a lawyer, like there's just this emphasis on action results, but actually like the showing, I feel like it's what makes it different. So I wish that I had known how to articulate my impact and my work better. And I also wish that I have had more guidance earlier through like coaching in my career, if there is anything that I would change, I would like straight out of the gate, straight out of college, reached out to like people, asked, who coaches you, who like works with you, and then got incredible advice on how to even start. Because I feel like even starting was a little rough for me. Like I just was charting like different paths, but I feel like it might have been an easier journey if I had someone like holding my hands through like those transitions.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, if that hadn't happened, we would not have this moment. So I'm glad that let's talk about the journey and talk about like your before and where you are now. And look at you. You can pretty much give a masterclass on what it means that's your impact right now. So that's awesome. One thing I'd like to touch on before we end our conversation today is I've heard, and I think that a lot of people will kind of resonate with this. Like, people feel uncomfortable talking about the impact of their work. Like, how did you navigate that?
I think it's having support that doesn't back down. I remember that when I reached out to you, I was more like, if she said I should, I would. Maybe there's no maybe there's no problem. But it was very I think it's very cringe. Like at least coming from a culture where they say don't toot your own horns,
Mm,
or like people see you as like, yeah, proud if you're talking about your achievements, and also like it makes you very uncomfortable
mm,
to your own, which is what you should actually do because the occasion calls for it. You're not just like going around the kitchen in the office or like having coffee chats with your colleagues and saying, "Oh, do you know that I achieved XYZ?" Like it's actually this occasion actually called for it, right? Like they requested, tell us about XYZ. So like what's the discomfort there? So I think it's your pushback, if I'm being honest, that really helped me navigate and get comfortable with like certain difficult conversations, because I remember that I would draft it and you're like, no, I'm sure there is no. And then I say, but I want to come off. I want to like, for example, with teamwork, like I want to show up as a team worker. You're like, yes, talking about what you did in your own evaluation does not make you less of a team worker. It's actually like this occasion calls for it,
that's
right?
right.
And so I think just the pushback and like the guidance where I'm like, okay, if she doesn't think it's odd, if she doesn't think it's weird, maybe it's not. And I think it's also one of those things where you like try and see, like I did it the first time and it was well received. And so it gave me the confidence to, be like, okay, so it's actually fine. Like, what was I afraid of?
Right.
So I've just
Right. You are actually helping your manager, like you're helping them represent your story. There's nothing wrong with advocacy. And then like they interviewed you for a job. Like those moments, like is you actually providing the evidence that you're actually the right hire and like they
yes.
have the right person. It's a pressure test and you are an experience. Like how are they experiencing you at work? Like when I read feedback, when I read self-performance reviews, like I'm trying to see, like, what do you think about yourself? What do you think about your work? And you can actually see, right? You can see how this person is shortchanging their work. So I'm glad that you did not shortchange yourself. Thank you for trusting. When we
Thank
had the conversation, I'm glad that it turned out well. All right. What advice do you have for anyone who might be listening or watching this video?
I think it's to trust people to help you. Like sometimes we can get in our heads, but like just having like the right guidance from credible people, it helps you like loosen those like walls or barriers that you have even set for yourself in your
Mm,
head. I think that a lot of us get like an imposter syndrome that like kind of makes us feel like, oh, am I good enough to be here and everything? But like when you actually like table it down and you like go back to your brag sheet and you read it, you're like, I'm actually that girl.
exactly. You're that person.
And I think it just pushes you. So I think just like allow yourself to find trusted people, and just like when you have someone like guiding you and providing like the coaching that you need, you also have to do the work, because like no one is going to write your feedback for you, or no one is going to advocate for you. Ultimately you have to do the work. But I think it's to like trust other people to help you, because for example, like I said, when I was having to like shift from that mindset of being uncomfortable talking about my achievements, I was like, if she thinks it's okay, then I would do it. So that it was like a function of trust, that okay, if someone thinks it's okay, then it's fine.
Thank you. And this is one area that I'm very, very passionate about. Like, I love to see people represent their work and that they actually get credit for it, right? Because I think there are a ton of high performers who will see themselves in what you shared today. They will see their stories in what you shared. So thank you again for
Thank
trusting
you
me
so
with
much
this
for
conversation
having me.
today.